The federal government will now resume normal operations.
Today on the Morning Edition, the historically long government shutdown has finally come to an end. The House passing the bill along to the President Trump's desk last night will bring you the latest from Washington. Plus, a fast-moving fire ripped through the Caribou Hotel in Glennallen. The latest details ahead. And later, the future is rapidly approaching. Flying cars may be closer to a daily reality than you might realize. We'll take a deeper look as the Morning Edition starts now. Wow. Flying cars. Reminds me of Back to the Future.
Jetsons, too. I'm just not a big fan. I don't know if I could do that. I think I don't want a wreck, but I'd rather have a wreck on the surface than
in the air.
Than in the air, because I'm not sure what would happen then.
Oh, that's true. That's a good point.
The future's scary, but it's also the technology that's coming and continuously evolving. Certainly looking forward to that as we continue to progress through the future. Waking up this morning, though, we are seeing those colder conditions continuing to remain with us across South Central. Now, a slow warming trend will carry us through the close of this week and into next week. We're going to be replacing those 20s with highs climbing near or above freezing. Of course, we're still holding on to some of those chilly conditions this week across South Central. And we're waking up to those temperatures in the single digits and the teens. 17 is where we're currently sitting at here in Anchorage. Winds, for the most part, remaining fairly light, but we are seeing just a brief opportunity for some wind chills across South Central. Wind chills, for the most part, are only going to be about degrees colder than what our actual air temperature is. 11 degrees in Campbell Creek, 16 in Muldoon. Clouds through the night pretty much keep temperatures fairly uniform as they act like a blanket. Now, while we are holding on to some cloudier conditions this morning, we will see a gradual return to some sunshine throughout the day. So that is some good news for those who like to get outdoors in this colder weather. You will see some of that sunshine later today. 15 degrees in Palmer, 23 in Seward, 21 degrees in Valdez. Of course, we're still holding on to some of that coastal activity where we're seeing just some isolated, scattered areas of some light snow showers, as well as some rain, if not some wintry mix as you head a little bit further south than Prince William Sound. As far as what we are going to see throughout the day, though, most locations do stay on the dry side, and we're going to see those temperatures just a few degrees warmer than yesterday. That cloud covers that we did see for areas of southwest yesterday that did bring some light snow, that's cleared out, and we're actually waking up to some colder conditions for a large portion of Southwest. I'll break that down for you coming up on my full forecast. Here across South Central, though, we are going to see those temperatures slowly warming into the low to mid-20s. As we head through the afternoon, we will see some sunshine breaks. I'll have more on that 7-day forecast coming up.
In our top story today on the Morning Edition, the shutdown, the longest in U.S. history, has finally come to an end. The House passed the bill last night that the Senate passed on to them, and it went to the president's desk to be signed, ending the shutdown at long last. Alice Barr has the details from Capitol Hill.
With a vote in the House,
the bill is passed,
and a presidential signature overnight, the longest government shutdown in U.S. history is now over.
The federal government will now resume normal operations.
Furloughed federal workers getting back on the job today after 43 days. They and those who worked without pay waiting to hear when their back pay checks will arrive. As airlines work to return to full capacity, the FAA freezing flight reductions at 6% instead of the planned 10% by Friday, with easing staffing shortages set to gradually unsnarl weeks of delays and cancellations.
I think it's horrible how politicians, all of them, use us as pawns.
SNAP federal food assistance will also grind back into gear for the millions of Americans still waiting for their full November payments, turning to food banks instead.
Massive increases in families needing our assistance.
As the consequences unwind, the two parties pointing blame at each other.
Absolutely no question in anybody's mind now that the Democrats were responsible for this.
Donald Trump and Republicans made the decision to shut the government down. Would rather do that than provide health care that's affordable.
As Democrats face their own divisions over the deal moderates in the Senate reached with Republicans that did not include health care reforms, an issue Republicans say they're now ready to address with the government back in business. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
The question now on many Alaskans' mind is, when will things return to normal? Will Courtney explains when SNAP benefits may get back on track.
SNAP ran out of funding in the beginning of November because of the government shutdown. But now that the government's been reopened, when are Alaskans going to be receiving those SNAP benefits? Well, it could be rather quickly. 66,000 Alaskans, that's the number. 66,000 use SNAP benefits here in the state. That's about 1 in 10 Alaskans. Now, according to CBS reporting, the USDA told CBS News that benefits could be delivered within 24 hours, but noted that it could be on a state-by-state basis and the timing could differ. So that's the question in the coming days we're asking. When are Alaskans going to be receiving those SNAP benefits, and will it be within that 24 hours? But another deadline we're looking at as well, January 30th. Why? Well, that's when the appropriations bill, now signed into law, ending the government shutdown, runs out of funding, and we could be looking at yet another government shutdown. Will Courtney?
Here in Alaska, a state deputy fire marshal is investigating what sparked a fire that ripped through the Caribou Hotel in Glennallen. Now, these photos show how intense the flames were as they raced through the building. This image that you may have seen in our earlier broadcast appears to show a moose on fire, but it is just a statue that stood in front of a hotel. Everyone inside made it out safely, but the fire moved quickly and left the hotel collapsed and smoldering. Troopers say the heat also damaged at least 5 vehicles before crews could stop the spread. Downtown cameras at Town Square Park in Anchorage are now live, launching a municipal pilot project aimed at boosting public safety. The 9 cameras went online Friday, about 7 months after the city first announced the plan. They are designed to help police identify witnesses, victims, and suspects in crimes around Town Square. City leaders say violent crime has risen since 2021, and APD reports more property crimes, thefts, and assaults in the downtown area. Officers say one of the biggest challenges has been arriving to scenes with witnesses gone and very little information to work with. The new cameras are meant to close that gap and give detectives a clearer starting point.
I think what you're going to see is at the beginning, since there's going to be more officers, more availability of technology with these cameras, you're going to see some arrests start to increase in the short term. And then over a period of time, you're going to start to see the numbers decrease as it's a deterrent effect with more presence and more arrests being made. And overall, over the long term, you're going to see, in the next 6 to 8 months, the downtown area being safer with a reduction in crime.
The cameras run around the clock, and the city plans to have them monitored during key hours when staffing allows. APD says it does not have the personnel to do that yet. Later today at 9 in the morning, APD will hold a press conference on retail theft as part of its broader public safety push. And evacuees from Kipnuk met in Anchorage last night to discuss former Typhoon Halong's response and recovery. It was one of the first large meetings of the community since so many were forced to relocate to Anchorage after the storm. Talking to the people that attended, we learned this was the first time many had seen each other since moving out of congregate shelters just a few weeks ago. Representatives of Alaska State Emergency Management, FEMA, and other state and federal agencies were present to provide more information on disaster assistance. They spoke about the measures being taken to rebuild these communities and did address the possibility of relocating the community.
The programs that we have to respond and recover from Typhoon Halong in this disaster will not relocate the communities. They're intended to repair and replace damaged infrastructure, homes, personal property, subsistence gear and equipment from the storm.
While it's unclear exactly what the future holds for these communities, responders said they are working to do as much before winter really sets in. One thing is for certain, help and support has never been in short supply. And even as musicians are stepping up to help Alaskans affected by Halong, a family-friendly fundraiser is happening this Saturday at Willowa Social in Anchorage, starting at 2 p.m. Bands like H3, the Hope Social Club, and Roland Roberts Band will perform. It's a chance to enjoy great music and support your fellow Alaskans in need. Still ahead on today's Morning Edition, our investigative team uncovers how, during the shutdown, an Alaska federal employee struggling to pay rent received a notice not to renew his lease. We look at protections may or may not exist next.
Colder weather still remains with us across the state. We are watching some active conditions that will return to the Gulf Coast region as well as through the Bering Sea. I'll have more on that, but first at sunrise, 9:01 in Anchorage, 7:42 in Juneau. Your full forecast is next.
So, Aaron, we started off this morning a little bit chilly. Can we see any warmer temperatures in our future?
We're just going to have to wait until next week before those temperatures actually climb back near or above freezing. But for the rest of this week, that big chill remains with us across the state. Now, the aurora activity continues to remain fairly high, of course, tonight. Not as great of an opportunity as what we did see the past 2 nights, but we'll still see a decent display. We did see some clearing out towards southeast, and we did see some photos coming in from parts of the Panhandle where that aurora came out through the night. But temperatures do slowly warm into the weekend and next week, and we're also going to be watching some light snow that will build back in across South Central. Temperatures this morning, 14 below in Fairbanks, 12 in McGrath. Check out Bethel, where those clouds have cleared. We actually began to see some views of that aurora through the night. 2 degrees is where you're currently sitting at. 40 in Cold Bay, and then, of course, as you head out towards the Aleutians, those temperatures are holding in the 40s, but we are expected to see some stormier weather making a return to the Bering Sea as well as the Gulf Coast region and even into the Gulf of Alaska. For most of the state, though, that ridge of high pressure continues to influence those colder conditions. And we've got several areas of low pressure that's dotting the landscape from the Gulf of Alaska out towards the Aleutians. This will keep some of that unsettled weather around, but largely just expecting some coastal activity. So our ridge remains with us. We do have an area of low pressure out towards the western Aleutians as well as towards the Kamchatka Peninsula. That is our trough that is steadily digging south towards the northern Pacific Ocean. And this is also leading to some colder conditions that is making a return to parts of southwest Alaska, where we're finally seeing the return, or where we're seeing the 20s that we have been holding on to. Those are disappearing, and we're actually tapping into some colder conditions. So as that low moves in from the Kamchatka Peninsula through the rest of this week, be prepared for some colder conditions to settle in through southwest Alaska. But that area of low pressure will also lead to some increasing snow for the Bristol Bay area as we welcome in our Friday. You can even see through the Alaska Peninsula out towards Kodiak, where we're going to see a chance for some rain, if not a rain-snow mix. So when it comes to that colder weather that we're going to see, Bethel, for your 7-day forecast, you can see temperatures stay in the teens through Saturday, and then we slowly warm next week back into the 20s and even near freezing by the middle of next week. So we're still holding on to that big chill across the state, and then temperatures do warm as we welcome in next week. We are still holding on to some of those clear skies today across parts of southwest Alaska. Now, as you head out towards Bristol Bay, a bit more cloud coverage to be expected. That's the system that will bring additional snow as we close out this week and welcome in your weekend. And that will also lead to unsettled weather moving back in across the Gulf of Alaska. And with colder conditions returning to southeast, we'll also see some snow chances looking possible. We'll likely hold off on our snow chances here across South Central until we welcome in next week. But still a chilly one out there. The sunshine breaks expected today with slowly warming conditions. 20s for inland areas, 30s as you head out towards the coast, and then that 7-day forecast showing that slow warming that we are going to see as we climb near or above freezing next week. And it does look likely that for the most part of November, as we head into the latter half of November, we'll probably see these temperatures here in South Central staying right around that freezing mark, if not warming into the mid-30s.
Has uncovered how some Alaska federal employees are facing notices from landlords to terminate their leases during the record government shutdown. What we found is under Alaska tenant-landlord rules, there are very few protections for those essential workers, like the federal worker Howard Johnson-Kuhns talked to this week. Facing unprecedented financial strain during the shutdown, he received a notice to terminate his lease.
This company has put me through a nightmare.
The nightmare Anchorage's Daniel Becker is talking about is Widener Apartment Homes sending the 24-year federal employee this notice to quit form as he works without pay during the government shutdown.
If you can imagine being an essential federal worker that's required to perform their duties while at the same time trying to worry about the eviction notice that you just got on your door, it is extremely stressful.
And adding to his stress, he showed us this series of Widener messages. Starting on October 22nd, Becker sent Widener's staff this letter from his employer, explaining the government shutdown would potentially delay his November rent payment. Widener's staff responded in an October 31st email apologizing for the delay, advising Becker he'd need to send recent pay stubs as proof of employment in addition to the first letter. Becker says he did and showed us he made a partial payment. Then on November 3rd, Becker received this notice of lease termination. As a result, Becker's federal employer wrote this letter directly to Widener on November 5th.
I was just reaching out to you because there was a new notice that was put on your door.
Adding to Becker's confusion, more messages with 4 different deadlines for paying the remainder of his rent. Fearing eviction, Becker says he borrowed money from a coworker to pay the rest of his rent.
They were very vague in my communications with them, and they were more concerned about getting their money by the end of the month than they were with working with me, despite the fact that when they were contacted by my superiors were told, yeah, we'll work with federal employees.
But now, for federal employees working without pay, unlike relief acts during the pandemic, there are currently no similar moratoriums in Alaska. Unlike states like Maryland, which allow federal workers to pause eviction proceedings during shutdowns, the state follows the Uniform Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, which requires only a 7-day notice to pay before eviction proceedings.
They have shown me that they value my rent money more than they value fostering the relationships with tenants and community.
Becker calls this, quote, one of the worst experiences of his life, and says many federal colleagues are struggling, resorting to loans and assistance from friends to cover basic expenses.
Even with the current bills that are passing and hopefully will be signed by the president, we are still facing this again in January. So in talking with my peers and coworkers, we're already talking about preparations for that possibility.
A possibility he worries could continue impacting thousands of Alaska's federal workers if future shutdowns occur. And that was Johnson Kuhn reporting after spending days requesting comment from Widener. A spokesperson sent us a statement late yesterday afternoon. Here's part of it, saying of Becker, he received the proper notices required under Alaska state law regarding monies owed. While it is true that he received multiple notices that may have been confusing, we were obligated to reissue them after he made partial payments to the account. The statement went on to say, quote, to clarify, Widener did not file any eviction actions in this case, and we remain committed to working with all of our residents throughout the duration of the shutdown. Widener's full statement is live right now on our website and mobile app. And by the way, we tried asking the governor and Anchorage mayor about this. They have not returned our request for comment. The Attorney General's office referred all questions about legal concerns to resources federal employees are receiving.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. Click subscribe so you can get the latest podcasts from Alaska's news source automatically and stay up to date with breaking news and in-depth reporting available for free 24/7 with the Alaska's News Source app.